Okay, this question asks or states initially, we've heard a lot about your positions, which I'm glad to hear that. But if you had to pick the single most pressing issue that faces our district right now, what would you say that is? That's great. I think to me, that question immediately brings to mind the current fiscal situation around our budget. Now, there's many issues that are very important in our district. But what makes the fiscal situation important is that it actually touches and affects all of these various facets as well. So having a very healthy, financial future within the district, that is key, because then that allows us to really turn the focus to the specific programs and the educational outcomes that we need to provide. But it does kind of start there from a financial perspective, right? That has to be very sound. So because that's a pressing matter, currently facing projected shortfalls in the recent history, we need to come up with creative solutions to work around that. Undoubtedly, there will need to be areas that we look at to say, well, we may need to pull away some financial resources from certain areas within the district in order to maintain our fiscal health. And that's just a necessary fact. But the way that we do that is really important, right? There isn't necessarily one formula of how to do that. But what we can do is, in my view, is we can kind of prioritize programs and offerings of our district that have the largest educational outcomes. To me, that's very important because, again, that's what we are as a K-12 district, is providing excellent education. So we need to make sure we have great data around what the educational outcomes are for our students involved in various programs. And then we also need to look at the enrollment of students in each of these programs, right? Programs that have a high level of enrollment, a lot of student engagement, but also have a lot of significant educational outcomes. Those certainly have to be a priority because we never want to reduce support for programs that are extremely effective. Then coming down that list, you may have programs that have very high enrollment, but perhaps the educational outcomes quantitatively are a little bit lower, or vice versa. You may have programs that have outstanding educational outcomes, but perhaps the student engagement enrollment is not where it is compared to some other programs. So those are kind of some of the in-between areas that we'll have to take a discerning look at. And then you also, at the bottom, you may have programs that have quantitatively lower educational outcomes and maybe also have very low amount of students that are involved in these programs. So now when these programs service specific populations, that's critical and key because we need to maintain equity of education in our district. But if there are programs where we are able to pull resources from, where we can minimize any kind of negative effect in terms of the number of students involved or the educational outcomes that a student might experience, that to me is where we can then do it very strategically, and make sure that even though we will have to make sure that we reach an area of financial health, we can do it in a way that poses the least amount of harm and maintains the maximum amount of educational benefits for the most number of students. And as we do that, I think we will see a lot more of our programs flourish. I think as we kind of reorganize which types of programs receive that type of support, and those programs begin to flourish and become a model of excellence, not only within our district, but within all of the surrounding area, then what that does is it also creates that reputation of Charter Oak as excelling in these specific areas, right? And that helps us to create this identity of Charter Oak, that when people of the surrounding area and even within our area think of Charter Oak, there are specific programs that we know excel. And so then we can utilize those types of programs to continue to attract families and parents of students that want their children in those types of programs, right? And that's also a way that we can continue to maybe strategize about how we can maintain levels of enrollment around the district, perhaps even increase levels of enrollment in a great situation, which then helps us to increase our increase our revenue as well. And so then with increased revenue, now we create this positive feedback loop where we have excelling programs that help us to generate more revenue, that then help us to support various other programs that we're also passionate about. So to me, that's kind of key and can put us on the right path to being able to provide excellent education across the board.